we're going to help people and our viewers out here for people who
are interested in church production media.
Yes.
Or maybe you dabble. Maybe you're a volunteer. Maybe you serve each week, or you're on a scheduled rotation. Maybe you oversee it. I don't know. I've done both, and so I'm here to answer questions. I wouldn't say I have years and years of experience, but I think I have a solid 3 years of both volunteer and being the guy in charge of experience. So I'm here to answer questions, and we'll talk about it. I'm not just going to be the one being interviewed.
Live production, church, back-end media.
So the family who gets up and sings every week, the mics aren't working. There's a weird echoing that's going on. What do you do? How do you fix?
You can't fix it on Sunday morning.
Well, I've seen Sam do it.
No. You're talking about an echo coming through the speaker system or in the room?
I don't. Probably through the speaker system.
Through the speaker system? Okay. Well, I don't know. I'd have to diagnose that one. I'm not.
There's usually a sound. There's usually like one of those sounds, and you're like, oh, I know it's doing it, and then
does it sound like a when they say certain words?
Yeah.
It's the EQ.
Okay. Yeah.
The low frequencies are too hot, and the high frequencies are not hot enough. Okay. Or maybe they're both really hot, but the low frequencies are way too hot. Okay. Hot meaning.
But I mean, this is urgent.
It's too high.
I mean, they're like, and it's doing that like like one of those little fake mics that you have when you're a kid, and it's going bang, that boing kind of noise, and they're like this, and they're like looking at the back, and Darlene's giving Sam this look.
And we in a heart, king of a heart. Hello. I don't know. There's a variety of issues. Yeah, I've never heard a boing coming through a speaker system before.
Well, it's like one of those weird, almost metallic-y echoes.
Can I give a caveat?
Yeah.
Yes. Give us some caviar.
I'm asking a BS question.
Can I? Here's my caveat. I am not an audio engineer.
Mm-hmm.
I know how audio works in a room. I am not an audio tech professional.
Okay,
so if you are, you already know more than me. But I know about cameras, I know about processes, I know about leading teams of people to operate that equipment.
Yes. So I think right there we should first just go into that, what you've done. Yeah,
but if you can't help the sound room guy, then I have no use for you.
So I've dabbled a little bit in it, but not as much as you.
Okay.
But where you used to work, they had 2 cameras.
They had 4 cameras.
4 cameras set up to get the speaker, the pastor, or whatever you want to call it.
Ultimately, it doesn't matter how many cameras you have if you have the right equipment.
You had the sound guy. You had the person running the projector.
Yep.
The video usually slides for music or for video verses on the screen, whatever you want to say. And then you also have, what else we got here?
Should I just go through what's usually in
give us a list right quick.
So in a contemporary modern church, which is what I did work in, obviously it's a lot simpler if you're in a more conservative environment or just a place that doesn't have the finances to make that environment. You usually have lights, audio, video, switching for video, and screens. Okay? Those are usually the equipment parts of it. Now you also get into the thing of live streaming. You get into the thing of mixing for a live stream. You can get into the specific jobs like a floor director or a stage director. You have things like, camera operators and switchers, those are 2 separate things. You usually have people manning the cameras, and then you also have someone who is kind of like the director of the cameras, usually wearing a headphone so they can talk to the camera guys and giving them instruction, let them know which camera's going live. And if you're good, you let people know, not just by telling them, but by having the light turned on the camera so that they can see when their camera's live, so they don't just start like checking focus. They don't start zooming in or getting a weird shot when you're live on your camera. You know what I mean?
Who writes the scripts?
Scripts.
Yeah,
scripts live.
For when like the youth pastor gets up there and he's like, "Hey, everybody," and he's like, "We're talking about," and
I'm gonna have to go with the youth pastor.
The youth pastor. He writes his own notes.
yeah, exactly. I will say, most of the time, so when it comes to pastors or speakers, they usually give the notes that they went up on the slides, and that's usually duplicated on a screen or a series of screens in the back of the room. The thing is, with production, it's kind of formatted, but there's room for creativity depending on the type of room you're in.
Yeah.
And so there's usually some kind of display. Sometimes it's on the floor in front of the stage, right in front of all the people, but it's angled so that they don't see it. They just see like this box or whatever in front of the stage, or it's usually in the back of the room. A couple things you usually have on that is the point you're on, the point that's next, and then the time that's counting down to let them know when it's time to wrap it up.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Because I want to give the audience a little information if they're searching for us, and they can get something out of this. Okay, can you run through some different types of mics and what they would be used for? Because I know this is something that we've discussed where churches, they don't know, they just buy some mics and they're like, a shotgun mic. I'm going to put the pastor on a shotgun mic. And we know that's not what we want.
Okay, yeah. So the basics is a microphone like this. This is called a dynamic microphone. There are two types of microphones, dynamic microphones and condensers. All of these are dynamics, but these are dynamics meant for podcasting.
Yeah.
This is just a standard dynamic mic. This can be used for what we're doing now. It can be used for voiceovers. It can be used for anything that's capturing, but it also can be used for live. Now, what's good about a dynamic mic? A dynamic mic can be pushed around. It can be, moved around. You're up on stage, you're holding it, right? And it's not going to give you a bunch of like, boom, it's not going to give you a bunch of like little sounds. Feedback, Obviously, now since this is on a little stand, if I do this, you can hear it in the microphone a little bit.
Or if you're like too close.
These are a little more durable.
They're not gonna.
But the good thing about condenser microphones, not dynamics, is they are a lot more crisp. They are a lot more true audio. They're going to get the highest quality. However, to make this not happen a lot in a really intense way, you can't touch it. Like, it has to be on a stand by itself. You can't touch it. A lot of people use those kind of microphones for, say, like violin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's on a stand, it's right in front of the keys. No one's going to touch it, but it gets a beautiful violin or cello sound.
So what does the preacher use? Whether it be one that's here on the pulpit or whether it be one that's on his jacket or on his ear, what do they have to use?
Usually the ones that are coming up of a pulpit are usually dynamics because you're touching it, you're pulling it down. They're going to be dynamics. Most things in live are going to be dynamics. Rarely ever are you going to use a condenser for everyday stage operations. Like if we were to do a live show, we'd use these.
Yeah.
Or we could use these too.
Will say there is, and I have seen this a lot in churches, where they have a shotgun mic.
Which shotguns are condensers, by the way.
Drop down from the, the ceiling.
Yes.
And pointing at like a choir.
Yeah.
Or someone singing, like that's a group of people more than just someone holding
so
a
they
mic.
don't have to have a mic.
Yes.
I will say this. That is very common.
Is it a good thing or bad thing? Bad thing. You don't like it.
I wouldn't say I'm the most knowledgeable, but in my experience, I would say if the room is very large, it's a good thing. If it is a medium or smaller room, it's unnecessary. You know what I mean? If it was a medium or small room, if it's a small room, it's unnecessary. If it's a large room, then it is necessary, and it can be a good thing. The problem with that, though, is to do that, you usually have to have a few of them, and people usually buy the cheapest quality possible, which when it comes to shotgun mics, you can't. You can't go cheap on shotgun mics.
So for a church that's not doing live services, right?
You mean live streaming?
Like live streaming.
Okay.
Right? is the mics? What's the mic setup look like with that? Are they the same kinds of mics, like the little ones that the pastors wear?
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure those are lapel mics. A lot of times those are, I believe, dynamic microphones.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, for some reason, I've never looked that up, but I would be willing to bet some money that those
would hope
most lav mics are going to be dynamic mics,
because those pastors move around a lot.
Yeah, and usually it's the clothes that are the issue, so that's why a lot of pastors.
Yeah, you get that.
Yeah, a lot of pastors went to the.
They call on their cell phone.
Oh, ours do. Yeah. Ours have the little.
Yeah,
the
those
little
are
mic
good
now.
until you go like this. You know what I mean?
Well,
and
the pastors aren't usually doing that.
I don't know. Some pastors like, praise the Lord.
Hallelujah.
But when they do that, the mic goes.
Or if they're stroking their beard.
It's not Pastor David, that's for sure. Or Alan.
Yeah. But yeah, a lot of pastors do this because it keeps the microphone usually away from the hands, right?
Yeah.
And the way those are set up is wireless. So it goes from the mic on a cord. You run it down the back of the shirt. You have a little clip to hold it so it doesn't pull too much on it and create more noise. And you just clip a wireless pack. That wireless pack is sending a signal, either analog or digital signal, to the back of the room. It's this little box called a receiver, and that receiver is what's plugged into the mixing board.
Okay.
I will say this happened to us one time.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the back running sound, and the mic kept cutting in and out.
Mm-hmm.
It was going in, it was working, then it would cut out.
That is a common problem with analog signals.
Yeah. The signal, it was a wireless mic, and it wasn't getting connection to the receiver.
You know, for people who are serious about live production, they're going to use those kind of wireless packs. Go digital. I noticed something while working is, so it's interesting. An analog works like a waveform. It's the first way of sending wireless audio, right? And it's the same with sending like broadcast TV.
Mm-hmm.
This is dull. However,
well, after you finish this thought, I have another question for you.
So digital sends code, and it's sent in kind of like a pixel-looking thing.
Mm-hmm.
Digital's it's not new, but it's newer, obviously, than analog. Analog sends waveforms, so like signals that's being shot out. Digital is it's
packets of information.
And it's very detailed. And you're never going to really be stepping on signals. You know how analog, all of a sudden, you start getting frequency? What?
You said digital versus like electric? Like electric vehicles? Like electric tools?
He's talking about digital versus like a sound wave.
Analog. Yeah. But pretty much
you can drop a sound wave,
okay,
right?
So imagine this. Imagine a sound wave is creating this much bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
So if you said,
right? Let me finish this thought, or I'm gonna lose it. It's creating a big stream of information. A digital is like, and all analog has to pass through this little road, right?
Yeah.
A digital expands the road, and it is one line. So there's a lot more space. You're never going to be stepping on another mic's frequency. You're never going to be having issues, back and forth. And so digital's always the way to go. You can dial it in to a digital frequency, and it's much more powerful, better quality, and you're hardly ever going to have any issues from it. But analog's cheaper, so I understand.
Yeah.
What's the question?
So you mentioned that part of production for a church is the video, the film, the sound.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about like leading other people.
Yes.
Like being in charge of other people.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So a lot of times, whether we like it or not, the audio people are not only the audio, the media people are relied on a lot by anyone who gets on stage.
Mm-hmm.
If something happens, they're instantly going like, where's the booth? Where are the people? Where's my support system? You know what I mean? That's by everybody singing, everybody speaking, everybody giving announcements, the music in the room, everything. They're all being supported by a media team. Mm-hmm. Some people that, if it's a smaller church, a lot of people just say, it doesn't matter. The pastor's just going to figure it out. You know what I mean? And they just get on stage and do the thing. However, when you have a room of about 500 to 1,000 people and something happens on stage, a mic doesn't work, well, you're probably a good, I'm really bad with distances, but 50 to 100 feet away from the stage. And you got 500 to 1,000 people just sitting there watching you. Mm-hmm. Well, who's the one feeling all the pressure?
Guy on stage. Second person feeling all the pressure is usually the audio guy, but the ones that they forget about is the people that's in charge of the media team. Mm-hmm. Media teams is the one that is corresponding to make sure all of this stuff is thought about and prepared for. And there's a lot of moving parts. The more people, the higher production, there's a lot of moving parts. And you need to be able to organize the team in a way to know that the people you're working with, the people you are coaching and helping and entrusting to operate this equipment, that they're going to do well and they know how to do their job. Mm-hmm. So like an example, if something happens to a mic, well, the person in charge, the media director, usually knows, okay, I have someone on backstage that's holding another pack that we're ready to unplug his mic and plug a new pack in. You know what I mean? Or to come out and hand him one of these and he's just going to walk like this the rest of the sermon. Yeah.
Hey there, you. If you enjoyed that clip, go subscribe to the main channel, Wiseworks Podcast. We got full podcasts. Leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment for us, and enjoy the content.